presenting. Today's class, it's the implementation of the database. Now we want to show our database in the code. So we are going to be using Node.js, which is the learning programming language for this class. So we'll be using Node.js. In my previous classes, my previous tutorial, I explained how to set up Node.js, how to set up Nest.js as well. So this is going to be brief because I have a guideline you need to follow. So that guideline is stated here. I'm going to follow the same guideline. I'll drop it in the chat. Then you are going to do the same thing to be able to get integrated to the database. So I'm going to show you also be connecting to my database. I've just used a small database record. I didn't do the practice I gave to you. So this is my Neon. I'm going to sign on to my Neon. This approach we are using is called database first. So we are starting with database before we create the code. Now we are going to create the code. So so the first thing we need to do is let me bring the chart up. So this is the chart. Create a Nest.js project. So we need this project name is called academic profile. So I'll copy this. Then I'll go to my VS Code. Remember, you use VS Code for this programming language. So this is a step-by-step approach. You know, you don't need to worry yourself coding or learning serious coding in programming anymore. AI is helping you, but you need to understand how programming works. So I'm going to look for my folder. We have a folder we created. Just listen and watch. You will practice the step-by-step guide is going to help you. So I prepared that. So Nest Coder, and I think we have a lesson 3. Lesson 3 because the database should have been lesson 3, but you know you are not coding there. So I have a lesson 3. So I click on it. Don't double click. Select folder. So the folder will become the environment you are going to write your code. You trust the author. Then this is the guide. I'm going to copy this guide. You are going to follow this guide. Once you follow this guide, you discover that you're really not doing anything. So just to understand. Then after you've mastered, you've practiced what's in the guide, make sure you learn the code, understand it. So this is the first thing I have in the guide. Create Nest-app at latest academic profile. That academic profile is the name of your project. So always remember, if you are creating a new project in Nest.js, use npx create Nest-app, enter. So it's going to create the app. So it's telling you want to proceed installing version of the 16.2. You say yes. So I'm doing that. Now you just pick the default yes. Pick Tailwind CSS is going to use that. It's going to use TypeScript and then TypeScript React. So this is all we want to do. So I think in previous class we learned how to use Tailwind. This class is not about designing, but you can remember to learn how to design. So just make design just to beautify your application. So add some beauty to it. It's adding aesthetic features to your design. So don't forget to do that. So let's wait for it. So if you have any question, you can ask why it's installing. So let's look at the guide. So this is the first step, create a project. That's what I have done. So the next thing I'm going to do is say cd to the application folder. You just need to follow the guide and I will explain things to you. I only made a simple code. I will explain what you need to also do in the assignment. So I changed cd academic profile. That's done. What's the next thing? The next thing is to install neon serverless driver. So I'll do this, copy npm install neon serverless driver. Then I'll just copy install. So install that, that's done. You can see how simple. So the next thing is to create environment, then use database URL in the environment. That aspect is not here, it's a practical aspect. So I'm going to show you what you do here. So first thing, if you look at your folder, there is an environment folder. An environment folder is a secured environment for keeping your configuration so that people do not you are not exposing your data to people, because if you put your code in GitHub, somebody can, and if it's under public, somebody can extract your code and then they see the connection string and they can go to your database and destroy your application. But if you put it in a secured folder, a secure file, which is usually the .env config file, it's a bit difficult for them. So under the application name, you right click and say new file and just put .env. So that is your environment variable. This is where you should keep any environment variables that you want to hide from anyone or from your application on the clouds when you put it on GitHub, so that people do not have access to that. It's part of your code, but it's hidden. You can put it also in your code, but once someone gets hang of your code, they know what your database in, and it can connect to it. So let's go to the database and extract. So these are database which you have been practicing Neon. So you need to get the connection string. How do you get connection? Click on the database name, then click on connect. Then you see this is the connection string. This is what we need. Just click on show snippet or copy snippet. When you say copy snippet, then you come back here, then you copy this. You paste it here in this that I've copied. Then you copy the entire thing here, database URL, then put it here. That is your connection string. So this is able to connect to your Neon DB. You see, it has some other information, but because you are using the code snippets, you can see it. But when you see show password, you can see it's showing the password. These are the password. Or you can show parameter only. See, when you see show parameter only, it shows you the details, password, user password, show password. It shows the password and this other thing. But for your integration, always use, I think it's always better you use connection string option. So when you use connection string, you just put it there. But there are some codes that you might need to have it as parameter only. So this is where you get it from. So it's already given to you on the cloud. Doesn't mean that any project you want to do, you must put it on Neon, because you have to be paying on Neon every month. So, but the beauty of putting on Neon is that, you know, when there is downtime, anything you want to do, you know, is well secure. You don't have to go to your server and say, what's happening to my database? You don't have to be worried, because there are some people managing. It's called a managed server. So Neon is posted on a managed server, but if you want to have it on your local system, you have to install, or your server, you have to install Neon or Postgres database, because this is a Postgres or my MS SQL, MySQL, whatever database you want to connect to, you put it on server. But those are tedious. But if your client says they don't have money, you have to make sure you have a way to install it. Then that's when you'll be using parameter integration. But best bet, if your client is on a cloud, make sure you use Neon and tell the customer you are going to pay $20 every month, about $10 every month. So once they agree, they're okay. So that second stage is done. That's what I have done. And number 3 is done, and I put the URL there. So let's move to the next stage. The next stage is create DB utility. Now, because we are not using ORM, we are using Neon. If you are using another ORM, you don't need, you have to change this logic. So, but we are using Neon, so we need to create a folder. We are not using ORM, so we are going to create a folder and create a file called db.tx, sorry. So you come here under the app, right click, create new folder, lib. Then under the lib, you create a new file and call it this. So you have done this. Then all you need to do is come over here, copy this code. See, I made it easier for you. So copy this code, then put it inside the db.ts. You have that. So that's your database. So this is saying import Neon, which is this one we did. We installed Neon server driver. We have installed the driver. So that's what it's doing here. Then it's exporting the configuration that we have kept in this .env file. Can you see how simple it is? So what I'm explaining to you, if you are using AI, it's going to generate to you, but you don't understand how it does it. And that's why we are doing this training, so that you can understand how AI generates its code, how it utilizes it, how it does it. So that's the essence of this. So make sure you save. So now let's move to the next stage. The next stage is we are now going to create a student API, because if you want to connect to a database, if you remember, if you look at my last course, database is the core. The database connects to what? An API. So that is why we need an API. In the traditional approach, we just have the database and we can connect our application. But in modern era programming, you have to have, you must hide your code. You must be able to hide your code. You don't have to expose your code to the outside world. So you must wrap it around your database around your API. Sorry, I want to call it encapsulate. You must be able to encapsulate your database around your API. So now the next thing is we are going to create the API service. So let's create a folder called API. So this is how you are going to create for other services. So you create a folder called API. Now the API, we are going to have 4 API. You are going to have API for school, for student, for lecturer. So you're going to create this folder. So I'll create this one. I'll create one for you. Then you will be able to create another API here. You call the API a new folder. You call it lecturer. So you create that one, but I'm going to be working on student. Then you create another one API you call classes based on the tables you created. You remember now, classes. Then you also have another one called courses. It's not in my documentation, but this tutorial I'm showing you will tell you what to. So these are the 4 you are going to create. Now we are only going to do the student own. So the next thing we're going to do is we create a route. So every one of them will also have a route. So every one of them will have a route and their code route will be there. So just create a file called route. For the lecturers, so you create a route. For the courses, you also create a route. For the classes, you also create a route. So you have that. But we know we are doing students, so you have to do the rest yourself. So what do you have in the route? This is the code. I have copied the code down to here. So I'm going to copy it, and put it under the student route, paste it here. Now let's see what it means. This is what it talks about. Now you can see it's looking at lib/db. So it's looking at this file, which is what we have put here. But because we have not saved, it's not seeing it, or you can search it. I'm not going to debug the code for you. I want you to resolve it yourself, fix. Let me see if you can fix it. So it's looking for the part. You must be able to find the part so that I can fix it. Now, what you have here is that we have 2 endpoints. One to get the student data, the other to update. So this student name, the select star from student, has to be the name that you have registered in your NeonDB. So if I go to my table, it is the name I call it here that I'm going to put there. Do you understand? So if I say alter table, this is it. I'll copy this. So you can use alter table to rename. So just change the name here. So and update it. So that's for NS. So copy the student data, then come back to your code and replace it. because I'm calling it student data. So if you use a different name, your code won't work. So make sure you have that work. Then this part, make sure it links itself automatically at lib/, or you can find the part where it's pointing to lib. Let's see if it's going to have like lib. So you have to find it is the direct path, or you can drag it. Let's see if you drag it, it's going to find it there. Sorry, no, let me kill this. So you need to find this. This, I don't want to waste time in this course. This is working at lib/db. So you should be able to find the file path which we have put here. Let me see where I put it there. Okay, sorry, I think did I put it under API? Oh, okay, that's the problem. Because I put it under the app, under the API, it should be under the app folder. Yeah. So it's under, it should be under the app folder, not under the API. So you should have this. This code is working. Then you need to now have the fields that you have in your database. Now, this field I have here, I don't want to spoon feed you, so you have to get is our student name, matric number, and student information. Your own might be different. So you have to provide all the fields. I have ID, student name, matric number, student info. So you have to use the same name here. Student name, because you're going to debug. This is where you will actually do coding. This is where, by making mistake, getting the error, getting to work. Matric number. So get the exact field that you have in your database. You put all the fields, because I have just two. I'm using two, but you may have 5, 6 fields. Make sure you use the same field. So you use the same field, student name, matric number, not 2 fields. You have to put all the fields you have created in your tables. So student info, let me put student info too, so that it won't be, because I use 2, you are using 2, student info. So whatever field you have in your database is what you provide here. You can see you are coding. If you are doing AI, you won't be doing this coding. AI will be building code for you, but if you don't understand this basic, you'll be in trouble. So this record, get this query. You don't have to select the field here, but when you want to save data, you understand? Because the application you are going to build and save. So this is just what you need for getting data from student and then updating data to student. Can you see how easy it is? This is going to be student data, and this is insert into student. So you are inserting. This is when you are adding new records. So you call this endpoint post. When you are saving, when you are getting the record, when you are saving record, you use this. When you are getting the record, you use this. So that's what you do. So you do the same thing under the API for classes, for courses, for lecturer, for students. Does that make sense? Does it make sense, please?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Please try and do that. See, this is under app API. So, okay, I think it's under app API students. Okay, that's what we have. Then lib. Okay, libs is outside, shouldn't be under the app. So let me take it out. That's why it's not saying it. Under the academic profile, let's put it outside. So this way, see, app is different, lib is different. Then to be able to see this file correctly. So just get that working. It should be working. I don't want to spend time on it. So the next step is create the card component. So you are going to create another folder called component. So we are going to create a folder called component and then put the card component. So we'll create a folder called component. Under the application, we'll create new folder. Component is a folder. Then inside the component, we have profile card. So that's the profile. We want to be able to show profile of the school, of the student or the lecturer. So just come here, new file, you create profile, then come into the codes. I have the codes there. So this pop will be the name you have given in your code. It won't be the same name. So you give it the name that you have given in your code. You know, my own is I call student data. And then, so let me copy this out. I cannot change it. This is just a guide for us. So I come to this code, paste it here. So I call this student data. If I go back to my route, student date, student name, profile. Let me go back to profile. I have student name, matric number, put other information that is required. Then you now have student name display here, matric number here. So then you have the student name you have defined is a string. Matric number is also a string. So you have created the pop. So you have a component for profile here. So if you have a different component for the lecturer, so you call it a different name, lecturer profile .tss. So you do the same thing for that too. So you also do for classes, but I only did for student. Let me rename this as student profile. So I call it student profile. So you can do whatever. The error are fixes. The intelligence of the code will also help you to fix the error. Now, the next thing is now to create the main page because it's going to connect to the main page. So let's create it under app. We are going to call page. Now, anything you put under app, by default, you have page, so you don't need to create. So see the page is already given. The page, because the page is under, not under API, it's under the app. When you create a page under any folder, it's become the route. So that's the default route. It's called home. So let's copy the code we have here. So what you do is that you come here. So what you do is copy everything from here to here, and then use it to replace the entire thing here. Can you see? So you need to find where this component is located, so that I can point to it. You can point to it. So it's going to find out because there's not that profile. It's called student profile now. That's why it's given the error. Can you see? I made a mistake there. So student profile, so it's able to find it. So when there's no error, it's going to find it because I place it in there. So you put an @ sign then slash. So the same thing you have in the API, which was giving an error. So let's see that route. So you need a slash here. So you can see it's working now. So you need to understand that. By practicing, you understand more. Now you can see why this one is giving error because we don't have anything name. We call it, it's called student name. If you see student name, that's what we have given in the profile matrix. So it's giving you an intelligence of what you have. So matrix number. The more you practice, the better you become. So you also need to understand those things. So it's going to be easier when you start practicing. So you can see I finished that. It doesn't mean it's working. I need to test it to make sure it works. So, but you know, by the time you start coding, you see it. You know, mine will not work because I already have my database is not in line, so I can't test it, but I'm just guiding you through the code. Now the next thing is, now that means you have finished your code. You can see how quickly you've done it because of the guide. Now the next thing, you create a repository, you create a GitHub. So let's go to Git and create a GitHub account for a GitHub repository for this project. So I hope you remember, but at least every class we also have to do that. So you know how to create, to remember to create your Git, because your Git serve your codes online. So let's create just a new repository. This project is called, if you go back to the beginning of the project, that's where the name is. It's called Academic Profile. So make sure you watch the video. It's going to guide you. The instruction will also help, but it will not help as so when you create a repository, see, the repository is public. Let me go back to setting. Because it's public, see, because it's public, whatever you put there is going to be exposed to the world. So you can change the visibility to private. That is, nobody will be able to see it. But by default, it's public. Maybe because you want to share, let everybody learn about your code. So when you make it public, and if your env, which you have put here, is not kept in a folder, if you have put it inside the lib here, inside the database here, and just put, instead of putting this neon, you can put the connection string here. I know this code now is exposed, because by the time you push, this code is exposed. So what you do is that once you have done the Git, remember the Git gives you the details. So these details, you remember, you're going to write it. Make sure your code is working before you push it. You can actually push it before it's working. Let's just push it before it's working. We can test the code later, but do the Git so that you know that whatever you have done is safe. So remember, don't put first commit, change it to dot, and remove, use first commit, then change readme to dot, add dot, then copy this back again, then come to your code. So then you do this so that you have your code saved on Git. Now see the screen, see the way it is. When you refresh, your code is already pushed. Your code is saved. So when you need to make change, you can clone the Git repo, or you can download, or you copy this code. You can clone it. So this is clone. If you want to clone it, use it in another place. This is how you do it. Now the next thing the guide is says it says that you should run dev. So when you run, you get a lot of errors. So npm run dev. But before you run npm run dev, make sure you run npm when you don't need to do npm install, because you are not cloning. So you can run npm run dev. Sorry, I'm pasting again. Don't need to paste. So just say npm run dev. So it's going to show me error, then I can start fixing the error. But it didn't show me error, it's working. So let me see the code. So I just connect, and then my code is running. So I can correct the error. But see, it's not showing anything because my database is not connected to anything. So if I refresh, it's not connected to anything. And then if you go back to your code, you should have an error. See, you have a series of error. So you correct the error. So many things are needed to be corrected. Now, why you are getting this error is because if you go back to the pages, let me copy this out. There is an initial import that you need to keep. So when you delete everything, you should leave the image next image, so that one shows on top. So this one, sometimes it's necessary for rendering image, so you have that. So you can see other error that occurs. I won't want to teach you that error. I won't want to resolve it with you, but as you test, you come across so many errors. Now I've not saved the code. You see, it's also one thing. See, I have to save all the changes I've made, and that's why it's still showing the other error. So if I now refresh now, it's giving me another error. It says get student. because I have some error. I call so many errors has to do with syntax. So you have to make sure you get everything correctly. Then if you don't understand the code, find out what is giving the error. And I think why I'm getting this error because my database is not in sync with my table structure. See, I have matrix, student name, matrix number, student info. Some information are not in sync. So I have to check every code, make sure that everything I have in the I have there is corrected. So, but I'm getting the error from this page. I don't want to debug, so take time to debug yourself. It's called under the what? Under the function home. So let's see that home. So here is where the error is. So it's not saying this get student. Why is it not saying this student? You need to understand. See, I call this API student. Is that the name I call the API? I call it student. That's correct. So a student. So why is it not correct? Why is it not showing? It's not getting the data. Look for why it's not getting the data. Ensure you have that. And you can see it's showing you that it has an await error. Why does it have an await? Find out why it has an await. It's probably await is missing or it doesn't support await. So debug the code yourself. Make sure you're able to check well. If you now have issues, I will now that you can't resolve, then I'll be able to tell you. So, but I wanted to find out this issue. If you go out, if you come against the same issues I have, I will gladly guide you. But let me just show you a sample code that I have done that is working. I'll quickly digress into that. Let me just show you that one. Please, if you have any question, let me know. So I have a lesson 3. So I have a lesson 3 with NestDB. The same code. You control click on this link. So that's 300. It's going to show you the page. Can you see? Oh, okay. Now I'm getting error here. But it shows before. Let me see this one. Okay. Let me stop it again. Let me see it again. Okay. There are a bunch of error. So, but the error shouldn't scare you. There's things that you need to fix. They are basically simple things. Okay. Now I get this error. I don't know, but I'll debug it later because this was working before. So it's telling me React object button frame. So it's an error that can be resolved. Sometimes you have this error. Maybe you have to restart the Next.js. By the time you restart, everything comes normal. So that's basically it. Find out the error. Even if you're having error, continue to code. Then in the next class, I'll be able to debug the error with you. But because we don't have much time, I don't want to spend more time after the 1 hour. So I would like to call it a day. Then we'll meet next week. Any question? Do you have any question? Jimmy? NS?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to copy so you can follow the guide and you'll be able to get things right, I believe.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So I've copied the guide. Follow the guide strictly and then use only the naming that you have in your database. You have to map your database with your record. So that's why I said, do student, make sure you test student, let student be working. Then move to lecturer. Do lecturer also, get the API, get the form, add it to the page. Then do that. Once one is working, you can leave the second one. In the other class, I will explain why it's not working and why you extend. So it's just for you to understand how the code works. You will not be doing much of coding in this era, mostly AI. But if you don't understand AI, how the code works? How do you want to understand how to correct your AI problem? So on that note, I like to call it a day. We'll meet next week. Practice in the next class. If you come to the next class without showing something, then you automatically out of the class. Try and practice and practice. In the absence of any question, we would like to call it a day.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.